San Juan Regional Medical Center. We interrupt our regularly scheduled program for this special presentation on KSJE, Farmington. It's now time for DJ for a Day on KSJE, and joining us to talk about hot topics in the oil and gas industry, Connie and George Sharpe from Merrion Oil Gas.
Good morning.
Good morning, Scott.
Good morning. Good morning.
I've always wanted to be a special program, and here we are, interrupting the regularly scheduled program.
You are special, George.
with this special deal, raising money for KSJE. If you guys are out there listening right now, then you can help support the station. That's what's going on all this week, is trying to keep this type of information coming and available to everybody out there. So
that's right, George. We're DJ for a day, but KSJE is here for our community all year long. 24/7. Invest now online at ksje.com. Click support.
KSJE.com. That's hard to remember, but I'm going to repeat it. I'm going to repeat it 47 times during this next
so we'll
hour.
Remember.
So you'll have it down.
We have phone numbers for you as well.
All right. In between saying KSJE.com, we're going to talk about oil and gas.
Woohoo!
Doesn't get any more exciting than this.
Energy makes America great.
Right. Scott, you've got that.
Yes, sir.
Energy pie chart. Why don't you bring that up? That's a good one to start with.
All right. Let me find it.
So, first off, I guess going back to
here it is.
What energy does for us. In the 1700s, before energy was invented, the steam engine was invented in 1712 by some Briton scientist.
Energy wasn't invented. It's always been
it's always been there. Harnessed energy, right?
There you go.
Captured that energy, started using it to do work for us. It was in the 1700s. At that time, there were 600 million people in the world, and there were the average life expectancy was 29 years. 29 years. And so took a while for that energy to catch on, but 100 years later, the Industrial Revolution kicked in globally, and since then, all of a sudden, one farm can feed 10,000. People have heated homes and running water and electricity, and so they're living healthier lives, and all of a sudden, we've got 7.7 billion people living an average life of 70 years versus 29 years.
And so we in the U.S. take all of that for granted.
Yeah,
we have dishwashers and washing machines, and we have all kinds of electronics and computers, and we heat and cool. We live our lives at the perfect temperature all the time, and we entertain ourselves with energy. So energy just is pervasive in all of our everyday lives.
So it makes our lives better. There's no question that we are reliant on energy. And if you don't think we're 100% reliant on energy, just ask Puerto Rico. You can blame climate change for the hurricane that went through there and wiped it out. But the worst part about it was the fact that they lost electricity and lost energy in their state. And it took huge amounts of energy to start the rebuilding process. As it was going to in California as well. It's going to take lots of carbon energy and front end loaders and whatever else to try to rebuild it. So as it's a double-edged sword, but it's a sword we're relying on. We are not going to go the other way on energy use. We do not want to go back to the 1700s. We do not want to say, okay,
who's going to volunteer to end it at 29?
Do you remember the movie? There was a movie where at 30 you died.
Yeah.
The running or something. It was way back when. Yeah.
Right.
Anyway.
So you'd have to pack a lot into that first 30 years.
30 years. Right. And Connie and I are both over 60. We're
right. We're already double our capacity.
Yeah, we're kind of glad we made it through. So.
just going to adjust your camera a little bit, George.
Oh.
Don't mind me at all.
Yeah, and
Don't mind the man behind the mirror.
right.
Don't worry about never asking a woman her age. Just go ahead and say it on the radio.
I didn't ask. Hi. I'm just blurting it out.
There you go. That's my George.
So we're looking at your energy pie graphic right now. So you want to talk about that? Or talk about something else?
Connie, why don't you go through this?
This is something that really strikes me, and
You need to make sure you're talking to your mic.
you think about how much energy we use, but you don't necessarily think about where it comes from. And while renewable energy it's a wonderful thing, it's great, and there's an endless supply, but the supply is pretty small, and you can make huge strides. You can double the amount of renewable energy, but it still doesn't make a big impact on the pie, because 80% of our energy, whether we like it or not, comes from hydrocarbons. And so coal and natural gas and oil are the bulk of our energy now. And every sort of energy that we use has a price. And the big thing now, of course, is climate change that everyone is worried about. And whether you think it's settled science, whether you don't think it's an impact at all, our climate's changing. And so we're going to have to think about what to do about that. But meanwhile, we can't stop using carbon energy. We can't replace 80% of our energy. And the 11.4% provided by nuclear energy and hydropower, those definitely come with costs. If you think about
Well, and they're not increasing. There's, the
Right.
environmentalists are absolutely against both new dams and new nuclear. And
right.
so
I mean, they're the Glen Canyon Dam. If you read the Monkey Wrench Gang, they
tried to
they
blow
wanted
it
to
up.
blow it up.
Right.
And so hydro's got its issues. Nuclear certainly has its issues, although it's getting better and better and better. But the negative connotations have kept people from being open-minded about that. There's biomass, there's geothermal, there's wind and solar, but those all have issues that carbon energy just doesn't have, because carbon energy is steady all the time.
Biomass is just hard to do in scale. If you took every bit of corn that's grown in the United States and made gasoline out of it, it would replace 10% of our gasoline supply. So we and the price of cornflakes would go through the roof, right? So
And it takes more energy to create.
you're actually
energy
right.
from biomass.
Yeah,
So
it
you're
takes
a
lot of
negative
energy.
there, really.
Geothermal is only located where in places where you've got near surface underground
Iceland.
heat. Iceland's got it. California's got some geothermal. They don't tap it, but if you go up to Yellowstone, there's a little bit of geothermal going on up there. But again, it really doesn't have a lot of running room. Wind and solar really are infinite. I mean, there's an infinite amount of solar in particular is the highest form of energy. But they're going to take a while, and they both are going to require significant breakthroughs in battery technology before they're going to be able to be widespread energy uses. In the meantime, no one wants to die. If there's a famine in Africa, we want to be able to go over there and take care of those people. If there's we want to be able to continue living the life that energy has brought us, and that's going to take continued oil and gas.
Well, and everyone wants the kind of life that we enjoy here in the United States. The third world countries, think of all the energy that they need to increase their standard of living to where we are.
Right.
And when that happens, the energy use is just going to go through the roof.
That's true, Connie. I want to say 25% of the world is still without electricity, and so as we bring that electricity and the people in China buy cars and computers and start having the things that we take for granted here in the United States, it's gonna increase the energy use in the world, and there's just no going backwards on energy use. We are going to continue to need energy. We haven't said KSJE.com in like 7 minutes. So
we haven't, but we have a new thing about KSJE. It takes us around the world and around the corner.
Tell me how
so
that.
you can
Tell me
pledge
about
now.
that.
Around the world and around the corner. Well, around the world, we have BBC World News, which is wonderful news. It may be, well, I'm just not going to say anything about our news. It's controversial these days. But BBC News it's fun to listen to. It's a different perspective. And the accents are so cool. But around the world and then around the corner.
Scott, I think a lot more people would listen to you if you could talk with a British accent.
You think that would do it?
Yes,
Let's see what you got.
British. That would be
Thank you,
wonderful.
Joe. No one wants to hear that. It's 8 o'clock in the morning, but thanks for thinking they do.
But the around the corner thing, that is the really valuable thing. KSJE has a calendar online, and if you listen, you can hear announcements. But it tells you all about not just San Juan County, but the whole entire region. And so you can hear what's going on, even as far as Albuquerque, but in Durango and regionally, and at San Juan College. I've missed many programs and read about them later at San Juan College and thought, oh man, I wish I'd seen that. And if you are on KSJE's website or you listen, you'll know about those things beforehand.
Plus, many of them are saved, right? Most of your programs you can go back and
they're all archived. We've got podcasts. Now that you're on video, you can watch your videos.
Forever. You guys can watch this over and over again.
Yes,
right?
you can.
I intend to
Share it with your friends.
I intend to.
Exactly, George.
No.
7 times.
Yes.
But speaking of watching and listening, you can pledge now at ksje.com.
Right. Did I say KSJE.com too?
KSJE.com.
Or you can call in at 505-566-3909. Surely there's someone out there that wants to call BS on all this energy talk, and we'd love to have a chat with you.
505-566-3909. Yes, please do call in and chat with us. We'd love to hear other perspectives.
So back to just the fact that we're not going backwards on energy use. We're going to continue to need energy. And so if the U.S. needs energy, until we quit using fossil fuels, it doesn't make sense to quit producing them. The vote that just went down in Colorado, Proposition 112, had the potential to basically shut down drilling for oil and gas in the state of Colorado. Luckily, it was defeated, but it was a narrow defeat, and I predict 2 to 4 years from now that will ultimately pass and drilling will be banned in Colorado. What's not going to be banned in Colorado is people driving their cars, people heating their homes, people using carbon energy. They're absolutely going to have to continue using carbon energy. The wells that provide that oil and gas to them will still be drilled. They just won't be drilled in Colorado. They'll be drilled somewhere else with less stringent environmental regulations, less stringent air emission regulations. And so all they've done is made things worse from a global warming perspective. If people that have in New York, and the states of New York, states of Maryland, one other that's banned drilling in their state.
It's not New Jersey.
Or banned fracking. Maybe New Jersey.
I don't know. But the funny thing is that from an environmental standpoint, there is the climate change. But we do that illustration. George has a program in San Juan County where we gather in groups all of the 8th graders and put them through an energy program to understand oil and gas, because they live in this region. They need to understand kind of what our lifeblood is. So in that program, we talk to them about the energy footprint of oil and gas, and maybe you don't like seeing a rig, maybe you don't like seeing a well near your property, maybe you feel there are health issues, which we contend that's not the case, but you can drill a well on an acre, a vertical well, or maybe a bunch of horizontal wells on up to 10 acres. But if you compare the energy that you get from that footprint compared to an array of solar panels or a windmill farm, there's a lot. There are other environmental impacts.
Just went back through the math, because again, the co-locating wells on a site are. It's commonplace now for in some cases as many 30, 40 wells get drilled on the same site, directionally to different places. Here, 4 to 10. But if you take a well site with 10 wells on it, that's equivalent on one 10-acre pad, creates the equivalent energy. It would take a wind farm of 115 square miles to replace the amount of energy you get off 10 acres of land. It would take, it's in my presentation, I don't have it, but don't remember what solar was. Solar wasn't nearly as big as wind. Wind takes a bigger footprint than solar. But solar is 5 or 10 square miles. That's a huge amount of land compared to the amount of land that's taken up. So you look at all those 30,000 wells that are out there in the San Juan Basin, and yes, there's a surface impact for those 30,000 wells. But it's orders of magnitude less than the surface impact. And again, I'm not saying that doesn't mean we don't need to use the surface to do wind and solar. I'm just saying that they come with their own price tag. They aren't free. And frankly, the precious metals and the rare earth metals that are used to make their components and used to make the batteries, they don't just come off trees. They come out of big, ugly holes in the ground somewhere. And again, mining is a necessary evil.
Disposal of batteries is my big.
And those are necessary parts of our energy use. Is that there is an impact. There is absolutely no zero impact option. And when people want zero impact, they're sticking their heads in the sand and being naive.
Right, we believe we need all of the above, is George's quote. Right. We need every kind of energy that we can possibly get our hands on.
So this is controversial. But
I have a question for you.
All right.
All right. And that would be when we saw the pie chart earlier this morning about the 80% that we're getting from carbon-based energy. If that were to go away and that renewable increase that piece of the pie, how much surface would take over by windmills and solar panels?
I haven't even tried to do that calculation.
Right, yeah. But it's a lot, right?
Yeah.
Well, the other thing is you could do that. You could cover the entire country, the surface area, but you still have to have backup because the wind doesn't always blow and the sun doesn't always shine,
and we don't have batteries figured out.
Not yet.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right.
Just a question. Thank you.
Till those
good question. We'll have to get that number worked out.
That's a big number. Whatever it is, it's a big number. I know that.
It would be a big number.
Yes.
With that, Scott, it's another time to say KSJE.com 4 more times. There you go. If you're out there listening, it's because you're getting information from KSJE that helps you learn more about life, learn more about your community, and hope that you will support KSJE by getting online and clicking that support button, sending Scott some money.
And it's easy. Supporting KSJE is easy.
It's easy.
Okay, what do you pay for Netflix? Even now, don't use your mom's password. If you're not using your mom's password, what are you actually paying for Netflix? But you're not watching Netflix. You're listening to KSJE. So go to
KSJE.com
and click support.
Right. So how do we get there? This is the George Sharpe solution that nobody's going to like. And if you want to, the environmentalist approach to oil and gas is to stop the production of oil and gas.
Wait, I have to insert this. Okay. I'm an environmentalist.
I am too. There you go.
I love the earth. I love being out in the woods. I love clean, fresh air. And, I am not for, overrunning everything in the pursuit of more and more and more energy. But I think we have to have a happy medium.
Got to be realistic about it.
Yeah.
And Connie, that's a good point. I think we're all environmentalists. Mm-hmm. Everybody's concerned about the future of the planet. Everyone's concerned about making sure, they live in a healthy environment, that the water's clean and the air's clean. And we're going to be getting to each of those issues here in a second, but just still back on the whole energy use thing. The bottom line is the extremists, if you will, the environmental activists, are trying to shut down the production of oil and gas domestically. And again, we've explained that that's not going to shut down the drilling of oil and gas wells. It's just going to move them to other countries. We're going to buy that oil and gas from other countries, as we did during the 70s when we had 70% of our oil was coming from foreign sources before the latest drilling boom. And we're now down well below 50%. and headed toward being energy independent. So as long as we're using energy, it just makes sense to produce it domestically. It makes sense to control the environmental aspect of it. It makes sense to keep the jobs here. It makes sense to keep the revenue here that goes with that. It just makes sense to do it on our own and not be buying that energy from people that we can't trust in other areas of the globe. Because until we quit using energy, those wells still need to be drilled, and we're still gonna use it. So back on using energy, what is going to make us quit using energy, Connie?
If it gets really super expensive.
If it gets expensive, right? Higher costs are going to cause us to cut back on energy, and no one likes higher costs. They're hard on the poor. They're hard on the elderly, on fixed income. But that is the reality of what it's going to take to get us to start curbing our energy use, and higher prices will also provide incentives for more renewables. They'll make it more economic to pursue renewables. They'll make them more economic in comparison to, and so in comparison to carbon energy. So the reality is we need higher prices for carbon energy. No one likes that when it happens. When the activists get drilling banned in New York and prices rise in New York because you got to pay transportation to get it there or whatever. Everyone blames the oil and gas companies for trying to rip us off. Yeah, everyone's the higher prices are the oil and gas companies' fault. No, they're actually the reverse. They're in the environmental activists' fault. For making it harder and harder more expensive to drill oil and gas. But I'm making the case that higher prices are a good thing, so I, if I were king of the world, would have a carbon tax on energy use.
And was it Oregon who just proposed a carbon tax and it failed? I'm not an advocate of a carbon tax.
Most people aren't, because it's going to raise the price to them.
No.
And that's why it failed in Oregon, where they're the greenest place on the planet. They still don't. Everyone wants their energy, and they want it for as cheap as they can get it, but they want it to be renewables. Well, that doesn't
I just
happen.
don't want the government to control it.
Yeah, I can understand. But if you're going to pay an extra $1 for gas, and that dollar is going to go to renewable research and expanding renewable energies, would you be willing to pay that extra $1?
Come on, get heated, people. Call in. Let's have a discussion here with George and all these things he's positing.
Our phone lines are open, so people can call in. They can also make a comment on our Facebook page, and we'll see it here, and we can share that with our guests our hosts who are here this morning, everybody.
566-3909. I'm still waiting for someone to call me on my crap here. But
Come on.
Just go off the short list, everybody, and you'll have a nice list to call George on.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
566-3909. The phone lines are open, everybody. Comment on Facebook and let us know what you think of our hot topics this morning about the oil and gas industry. It's our DJ for a Day event here on KSJE. George Sharpe is here, along with Connie Dinning from Merrion Oil and Gas, talking about a lot of hot topics. And there's a bunch more that you've got, George. Do you want to look at those?
Yeah, let's do. So we've talked about energy and why it's so important, why oil and gas is not going away. On the Proposition 112, the industry opposition to Proposition 112 in Colorado focused on the money it was going to cost them. That, I felt, was the wrong focus. What they should have focused on was the fact that it was not going to, that nobody was in danger within 2,500 feet. No one's in danger within 500 feet. No one's in danger standing right next to a well site.
We do have
well site safety, right?
To
well site safety.
We do have a comment from Natalie who says she would be willing to pay that extra $1.
All right,
she says.
All right,
Thank you, Natalie.
So thank you, Natalie.
Yeah.
All right. But sorry for interrupting, but I knew you wanted to hear from folks who are watching.
I did. I'm glad Natalie's watching or listening or typing in.
She's experiencing the entire George and Connie experience.
Well, I'm sorry for you, Natalie, but you have to get all this. But anyway, back on the well site safety, and this gets to air emissions as well. Air emissions near a well site are not a health issue. They are not a health issue. There are compounds in hydrocarbon gas besides methane. There's methane is the primary component, but there are other components in there that at high enough concentrations are hazardous to your health.
That's why you don't stand at the gas tank when you're filling up your car and stick your nose right by the nozzle.
Right. There are, but none of those get to high enough concentrations. Not even close. There are compounds in the exhaust of your car that are hazardous to your health. But you're not breathing. You're not sticking your mouth over the exhaust and breathing it for 24 hours. Nor are you sticking your head in the condensate tank, on a well site and breathing it for 24 hours.
But I think that's one of the huge problems is education. And we as an industry, I don't know if we've failed or haven't even tried, but I don't think people understand that what you're saying, that it's not dangerous to be near a well site. Of course, you don't want to climb the fence and mess with the equipment or anything like that. That's not safe. But as far as the air emissions, that's certainly not going to hurt you. And the city has noise ordinances, and we have to be very careful about noise levels. And so there are lots and lots of things we do on the well site to make it safe. And we have well sites in parks, by schools, all over
next
town.
to baseball fields.
And there haven't been any repercussions from that at all. And so,
well, I grew up playing at Worley Field right next to that Dakota well my entire life, and as did anyone else who's grown up here in Farmington. And we actually have a lower cancer rate than national average. Ironically enough, I would have guessed it's different just because it seems like a lot of people get cancer, but the reality is we have a lower cancer rate, a lower bronchitis rate from breathing issues, and so air emissions, and that's the deal. Is there, the methane rule, the wanting to reduce the emissions, is on the surface an admirable rule, but emissions will never be zero. Even with the methane emission rule, they aren't going to zero. They're just mitigating it. They will never be zero. And, as long as there are some emissions, then the activists are going to be able to point at those and say, and look at those compounds in there. That's unhealthy.
Right.
I don't,
right.
And so there is
driving a car is pretty darn unhealthy.
Right.
If you want to think about
Statistically.
that. Think of people who die in a car crashes.
Yeah. So you're not in danger around the wells. If you live around a well in San Juan County, and there are lots of them, you are as long as you stay outside that fence, there is absolutely nothing that's going to happen to you or your children or your family or anyone else that's around there.
Another comment from Facebook, everybody, I wanted to pass along about a lot of Native Americans upset with the oil and gas industry. What would you suggest that this questioner tell my friends when the topic arises?
I think you could tell your friends that you're a fan of driving your car, and until you aren't a fan of driving your car, you're going to need oil wells drilled somewhere. That's the bottom line. If you look at Native Americans, they also, as a general rule and general tribes, are opposed to coal and opposed to a lot of other things. But until you try to take the coal plants away, the Navajo Nation is standing up and saying, "Whoa, wait a minute!" That plant out near Page, the ones here on the San Juan Basin, major economic impacts to the Navajo Nation as those coal plants get shut down.
As you say though about Proposition 112, the economic impacts are huge, but the other side of it again is education, I think, and power plants are not pretty, and they do mar the landscape, but they provide the energy that we need to live, and as do oil and gas, and the tribes.
One third of the electrons that are lighting the lights in here are coming from the power plant.
Right.
Right now, City of Farmington gets a good chunk of their electrons, from that power plant. So
and education about those trade-offs is really important. And I do understand for Native Americans who are so close to live close to the earth, and they live, many of them, on the reservations that are very, very remote. I can see where you really want to
preserve
that way of life. But there are trade-offs, and I would encourage them to be more educated about what they can do.
Speaking of preserving, if you want to preserve your right to public radio and to listen to programs like these, you need to go to KSJE.com and click on support and send in a little love our way, or call in at 566-3909.
Because we all work hard for our money, and this week on KSJE, your money works even harder. All pledges are matched this week, dollar for dollar. Pledge now at KSJE.com and click support. Double your hardworking dollars now. It's like a 50% off sale. Come on, girls.
Right.
Jump in there.
The more you donate, the more you save. Right. Okay, we've talked about well site safety. Let's talk about fracking. Connie,
let's talk about
fracking.
I'm not going to say fracking. It is hydraulic fracturing, and I think that
she doesn't even like spelling it with a K.
No, it doesn't have a K. It's F. When
all right, there it is. It's got a K on that diagram.
I've been fracking.
I've given in.
I've been fracking for over 30 years, and frack is short for hydraulic fracturing, but it's been made out to be a very bad word. And I do believe it's just a ploy to make it sound like a bad word and to use it as a cause to shut down drilling for oil and gas in this country. And, you can focus on that if you like, but I don't believe that hydraulic
What is the
fracturing...
fracking? Explain what happens.
Okay.
What goes on?
Okay. Some places, like in the Permian Basin, your rock is very porous, and all you have to do is drill a hole, or like in Saudi Arabia, you drill a hole, and here it comes gushing at you. Well, we're not quite that fortunate in many places in the United States, and the rock is not very porous, and so what you have to do is crack it before you can get any production out of it. And so, in order to crack the rock, some really smart guys long time ago, well, I don't know, how long's fracking been around? 50, 70 years? 70 years.
Late 50s, early 60s.
Yeah, so it has been around a long time. And they figured out that you can pressurize water and make a sand slurry, and you can crack the rock and prop that crack open with the sand slurry, and the water bleeds off, but the little grains stay in there, and you can produce oil and gas.
So just to add a little bit to that, so you pump water and sand at very high pressures, it cracks the rock. When you get done pumping, you relieve the pressure, and the fracture closes on the sand, and the sand holds the fracture open, and the water's produced as you relieve the pressure. So that's the process. There's concern that the fracking could grow up into groundwater, and that is so far from the truth. That is.
Draw yourself a picture right now. If you're listening to this, get yourself a pencil and draw this to scale, and draw a hole about even a very shallow well, about 2,000 feet deep, and then put rock all the way up and down that hole, except for at the very top, maybe 200 feet, there may be some drinking water. So you've got a pipe in that hole encased in cement, and there is no communication between the bottom of that hole where you're fracturing and the 200 feet below surface.
The fractures themselves, you can actually measure using microseismic where those fractures go and how far they grow. And they grow at the most a few hundred feet from the wellbore. They do not grow through thousands.
We're delighted if they're a few hundred feet from the wellbore.
They do not grow through thousands of feet of rock.
I do want to mention you have a compliment on our Facebook page from a Melissa Sharpe saying that you're very knowledgeable guest DJs. So thank you for that.
Tell her she doesn't know how to spell knowledgeable. Tell her.
We may not get that final E.
Honey, you need to work on your spelling.
That's
you
all
leave
right.
her alone, George. She's the best thing that ever happened to you.
Is that how you spell DJs too? I don't even know how to spell DJs.
We'll take it.
She's right.
All right.
All right.
Yeah, you just agree with her, and you'll be better off all through your life.
That's right. That's right. So if you don't believe us on fracking, Obama's EPA, this isn't Trump's EPA, this is Obama's EPA, back in 2015, after a 3-year exhaustive study of the process, concluded that there are events in the drilling and fracking process that have gotten into groundwater, but none of them were subsurface. All of them were surface spills or accidents, and there's going to be that. You're going to have a surface spill. And when we make a spill, oil and gas does impact the environment. Let me be the first to say that. And we try to minimize that impact, but it is not going to zero. When we make a mess, we clean it up. We make messes. There's spills at the surface. Yes, there's accidents that happen, but those accidents are addressed and cleaned up, and it's not a part of the fracking itself. It's not part of the physics of what's going on underground. None of that is dangerous.
Fracking's just a cool thing to make it sound bad.
Right. Well, it's
cool word to use.
We wouldn't have $3 gas without it. We'd have $6 gas.
Right, and we wouldn't be having we wouldn't be having all this domestic oil production.
We wouldn't. The state of New Mexico wouldn't have $1.2 billion in excess revenue this year to spend, and be in such a great financial shape.
Newly elected politicians to get hold of and spend like crazy.
Right. So. Again, go back and look up that 2015 EPA study by Obama's EPA, and it will hopefully address any fears you may have in regard to fracking. And so the next one on the list is earthquakes. Earthquakes are a real issue. They are not associated with the fracking process. They're associated with the long-term disposal of water. So
explain that, George, because I'm not sure people understand that.
So as you even in a well that hasn't been fracked, most wells produce a little bit of water. So when all these sediments, these are in sandstone reservoirs, sedimentary rock. These sediments were in the ocean. The ocean was initially, all the sediments were 100% saturated with salt water.
Seawater. The salinity of seawater.
Yeah. And over years, the salt and that precipitated out and made that sand into sandstone, cemented it together at the contact points, still have space in between, just like crushed ice melting a little bit and freezing together. Seems like a solid hunk of ice, but there's still space.
Now don't go off on
a tangent. Right. Right. We were talking about earthquakes. So go ahead.
So the earth. When I first heard about earthquakes, I thought, oh, that's a made up thing. But turns out it is a real thing. But where it's been a problem, the biggest problem has been in Oklahoma. You've probably heard about that. And so what happens when you produce this salty water along with oil and gas? Well, you don't want that, and it's a waste product, and it's difficult to get rid of. But what they discovered a long time ago is you can inject it back into the ground. And so usually you want to inject it into a pretty deep formation to get rid of it. Well, in Oklahoma, they were injecting it into several formations, but one was the Arbuckle. And the Arbuckle is basement rock. And what happened is that it was pretty highly faulted.
Lubricating the faults.
And so the salt water lubricated those faults, and that did cause seismic activity in Oklahoma. And it was a real thing. So what's happened is when this was discovered, the regulators in Oklahoma stepped in and really regulate the injection into the Arbuckle.
Required them to reduce the amount of water they're injecting.
Right.
So if you picture a fracture, it's a tensile crack of the rock. The rock's actually pulling apart. A earthquake is a slip. It's a shear slip of the fault. And so a frac is a short-term event that stops and stops. The fracking itself doesn't cause the earthquake, but the long-term injection of water lubricates those faults up, and then the faults slide against each other in a shear slip.
At that deep level where it's already faulted.
Right. So it is an issue. It's not an issue here in New Mexico, thankfully. There are a handful of disposal wells in the San Juan Basin that have been injecting water for 60 years.
And they're relatively shallow geologically compared to the injection zone in Oklahoma.
Right. Water consumption. This is another real issue. It takes a lot of water to frack a well. And so a golf course, a single stage of a frac job is 250,000 gallons plus or minus of water on a slick water frac. And so if you do a 2-mile lateral with 60 frac stages, that's 20 million gallons of water or whatever it is. It's a bunch of water. It's a golf course in one day. San Juan Country Club uses 800,000 gallons of water in a day. And so that's about 30 days of water of the San Juan Country Club it takes to frack a well. Well, so you're trading, if you frack a well and that well makes 1 million barrels of oil over its lifetime, that provides enough power if it would turn into electricity, which it's not, it's going to be turned into car, but if you, on an equivalent basis, 8,000 homes for 20 years. That's how much energy you get out of that 30 days worth of water versus using it on the San Juan Country Club where you got 100 golfers that enjoy golfing for 30 days.
And I'm not a golfer, so I'd be happy to make that trade-off.
It does use a lot of water, but when you put it in perspective, it's a pretty efficient use of the water source. It's a one-time upfront use. For 20 years, you're enjoying this energy, and we know we've already decided we're pretty like that energy. You know, we all like our cars. We like the lights on. We like the heat on now on this 18-degree day.
And many of the companies are recycling their frac water.
Right.
And
trying to reuse it, being more smart about it. But it's still an issue, an ongoing issue, and again, it's one that will never go to zero. We'll always need to have some water use as part of the deal.
And let me ask you, George, is that a high-producing well, that million
barrels of well is
average?
that's what they're saying down in the Permian. That's what they're saying their average well is going to make.
Okay.
Is 1 million barrels.
So it's not super high or super low. It's right
It's
in the
a
middle.
1 million barrels is a darn good well.
You'd like to see that.
Yeah,
okay.
for
The Permian's
All
kind of a different animal than we are
a
up
little
here.
bigger animal. So they're
Sure.
So if you go to WPX wasn't there anymore, but if you had gone to WPX's well site before they sold out to and DJ Resources, Enduring, which one bought them? Anyway, one of them bought them. 500,000 barrels is what they're saying. So half of that. So
Okay.
only 4,000 families for 20 years.
All right.
Still a lot of impact.
Got it. Thank you.
In the San Juan Basin.
Very good. Our guests are DJ for a day this morning, and George Sharpe is here from Merrion Oil Gas. Connie Dinning also here from Merrion Oil Gas, talking about these hot button issues and taking your questions, answering your questions. So we do have a few more minutes remaining, about 8 more minutes of the show for both of you, and we can't thank you enough for being here. But if folks do want to make a comment on our Facebook page and ask a question about the oil and gas industry, we don't have any better experts here than to talk about this with us this morning, or give us a call. The phone lines are open, 505-566-3909, 566-3909.
There are better experts out there. They just aren't here.
I
Right,
guess
that's
maybe.
right.
Well, I don't.
They are right here in the studio.
All you've got is us.
They're not returning my calls, so that's all I can tell you.
And since you're having such a good time with us this morning, please remember to go online to ksje.com, click on support, and support our local station.
Right.
That's why we're doing this. We are raising money for KSJE. We are listener supported, and it's very easy to do securely through PayPal on our website at ksje.com and click on support. And both of you, I know, have done that in the past. So
And
if
we've
George,
done
that, we'll do
if
it
George
again.
can do it, anybody
Right,
can do it, really. I mean, come on.
That is
everybody.
true, Scott.
Thank
Not
you.
only if I can do it from just a physical logistics standpoint of figuring out the thing, but actually will dust out my wallet. And,
that's a big deal.
Wow. All right. This is a momentous occasion.
My wife
it is.
will attest to
Okay.
the fact that I'm as squeaky as they come.
Well, as we're a listener-supported station, we appreciate the support of everybody who listens and who gets some
Squeaky
useful
as you may
information.
be.
That's right. That's right. So be squeaky.
Well,
Thank you both.
Don't get me started. I'll tell the ice cream story. Melissa, are you listening?
Which ice cream story?
About the budget when you
Oh,
first were married.
right. Yep. So I'll go ahead and tell that story on myself.
Yeah, you should.
So Melissa and I were on a budget. We had, whatever it was, so much money a week for miscellaneous, and we'd spend our money for the week miscellaneous, and she wanted to buy an ice cream cone, and I said, "No, honey, we can't get an ice cream cone." And she said, "What do you mean? We can afford an ice cream cone?" And sure, we can afford an ice cream cone. We just can't afford all the ice cream cones we want. We gotta cut the line, and we cut the line at this ice cream cone. So,
And guess at what point the power shifted in the Sharpe marriage.
guess who lost that argument? Guess who still got her ice cream cone? So, yeah, I'm
So skip your ice cream cone for,
Right.
for a couple of days and
Skip your ice cream
send that money
cone.
to
Yeah,
KSJE.
throw a few bucks to KSJE and help keep this type of program on the air. Otherwise they'll come back with some less than real experts. Who knows what kind of talent they'll have without your support? Wait, that was not a good sales point.
Less
Let me
real
reword
experts
that. So.
So this year, here we are talking about this serious thing, and traditionally on this day, you and T. Greg have come in.
And played stupid music.
And played music and had fun.
Actually, it
so
wasn't stupid music. It was 70s music and told stupid jokes. Was what it
There's
was.
nothing better than 70s music.
Do you have a good stupid joke?
I don't have a good stupid joke.
I've got one.
Uh-oh.
So this blonde lady goes in to apply for a job, and the guy says, "Well, tell me why I should hire you." And she says, "Well, I know lots of interesting facts." And he goes, "You do? Like what, for example?" She says, "Well, I know all the capitals of all the states in the United States." He goes, "That's cool. So what's the capital of Wyoming?" "Wyoming, duh, capital W." All right, there you go. That's what you got last year.
Didn't have a rim shot ready. I'm sorry. But if I had, I would have played it right there.
You didn't have a laugh track. Dang it, Scott.
No.
Where is your laugh track?
Yeah, we didn't have that either.
Right.
But it was funny.
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't
Yes.
have a joke.
You don't?
Yeah, well, I don't have one I can tell on the radio.
Oh, fair enough. Stop right there.
Did you see Scott's
Stop
face?
right
He panicked.
there,
He
right.
panicked. I would never, Scott.
right.
There you go. So, as we wrap up the show today, both of you, we have some kind of bottom lines, I guess, right? And let's see. Another thank you from Natalie for listening this morning, and she thanks you guys for having the conversation with us. So, thank you for watching, Natalie. We appreciate it very
Natalie.
much.
Thank you, Natalie.
All right.
Share this with your friends. Get them to support KSJE to keep this conversation going. I think that's very important for our community. And I don't know of many other media outlets that do this on a daily basis.
No, I've been in here several times talking about volunteer programs and various things, and it's awesome to have this resource that allows us to reach out to the community and share information with the community. So.
Right, and we love to educate, and we think that's a really important part of the conversation.
Very good. Well, thank you both again for coming in. I guess bottom lines, George Sharpe, if you want to share and wrap up our conversation, and maybe we'll tell a few more jokes, but no free lunch, you say?
No free lunch. We need all the energy sources we can get. No one's going to go backwards. No one wants to go back to the 1700s. So energy is our friend and has made life much, much better. And there isn't a single energy source out there that doesn't have some sort of impact. And so we've got to realize that we do need to minimize our impact and manage our impacts, but there is no zero impact scenario. And in terms of
For any kind of industry, energy industry,
right?
Any
Kind of industry.
any kind.
And in terms of oil and gas, the impacts we believe are exaggerated by the environmental activists in an effort to scare young mothers into thinking their children are in danger near oil and gas wells and their water's in danger by fracking. Those just aren't true. The reality is, yes, there are impacts, but they're not threatening our health and our livelihoods. So.
Right.
Very good. Just a couple of minutes remaining, both of you this morning. So could we talk about, in those 2 minutes, what this means for our area? I mean, we seem to be in an area of a time of transition in the San Juan Basin. I mean, we still have a lot of gas in the ground. We got a lot of coal, oil, not so much. But what does that mean for the future here?
Well, if
Open your crystal ball and take a look.
we're in kind of a strange position here because we're very, very heavily skewed toward natural gas, and natural gas prices have been very low for a long time, and so it's difficult to produce economically. And so, we're a boom and bust economy, and right now things aren't great, but as natural gas price, as you say, there's still a lot of natural gas in the ground here. So eventually, the prices will go up, and this will boom again. We think and we hope.
Of the three carbon energies, oil, coal, and natural gas is by far the cleanest. It is quickly replacing coal as the electricity fuel of choice. And in terms of oil, which is the primary transportation fuel, it's still going to take some. There are natural gas cars, but they haven't caught on. And so using it as a transportation fuel is going to be an issue. But at some point, natural gas's day will come, and this basin will rise again.
All right. Thank you both very much. We are about 30 seconds away, so we're out of time. But thank you so much. One more pitch for KSJE, I guess.
One more quick one.
Yes.
Click on
Pledge
KSJE.com. Click on KSJE.com. I got to say it 3 more times.
It's not like,
click
it's
on
not like
support.
Beetlejuice. You don't have to say it 3 times. It's
Right,
okay.
if you say it enough.
That's right. But thank you both very much.
Thank you,
All right.
Scott.
Thanks for caring, Scott.
All right,
Thanks
very
for
good.
caring out there to the listeners.
Exactly. My guests here on KSJE,
Bye, honey.
our DJ for a day, George Sharpe and Connie Denning. This is KSJE, Farmington, New Mexico.
All right. Scott, thank you so much.
Thank you, Scott.